Welcome to my podcast, where we are going to talk about a lifestyle with dogs and throw in a few life lessons along the way. Whether you're a hound hunter, bird dog enthusiast, running setters, pointers, retrievers, or a flat-out running dog junkie, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Heath Hyatt, a certified law enforcement canine trainer with over 3 decades of personal and professional training and handling experience. It's time for me to pay it forward. So grab your leads, lace up those boots, and come and join me on this lifelong process of teaching, training, and learning. Are you looking to unlock your dog's full potential and give them the best nutrition possible for peak performance? Then look no further. Inukshuk has what you're looking for. Inukshuk's nutrient-dense formulas are crafted to keep your dog's energy high and performance top-notch. Packed with premium proteins and essential fats, Inukshuk delivers the balanced nutrition your dog needs to thrive. From hunting dogs to police canines, Inukshuk is trusted by professionals. Give your dog the power of peak performance with Inukshuk Professional Dog Food. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of What's Up Wednesday, where you're going to get all your canine training know-how. You know the drill. If you've ever followed a cold-nosed hound through the woods, or you're just getting started out with a new pack, there's always something in here for you. Has this ever happened to you? If you've hunted hounds long enough, this is going to resonate. There is a special kind of magic in a hound house at 4 a.m. And it ain't quiet. I swear, those dogs could sleep through a thunderstorm, chainsaw running, FedEx truck backing in the driveway, which seems to be every day now. But the second that I tap the kitchen light switch, they come alive like I just rang the dinner bell at a Baptist homecoming. They can't hear it. Heck, half of my dogs can't even see it. But somehow, that little click of that light is their cue to start bellowing like we fixing to chase a bear clean off a mountain. So forget the alarm clocks. My pack runs off pure intuition and kitchen electricity. Now, does that happen to you guys? When you start hunting the hounds and that light comes on, bam. The dogs on one side of my place can't see the kitchen. They just can't. And the dogs that back in the back corner of the yard, they can. And I have yet to figure this out. So I've got 2 lights in my kitchen. I got the main light, and then I've got a light where you walk in the back door. I will come into the kitchen, and I will turn the light on where you walk in the back door. So it only lights up like a quarter of the kitchen. And I'm telling you, Attica, when that light comes on, boom, she's barking. And I'm like, I was standing in the kitchen the other morning making coffee, and I'm like, how is this possible? Like, you can't hear it. I'm not even sure she sees it. But yet, as soon as I flip it on, bam. And you know those dogs are in a dead, comatose sleep. But it happens. Everybody knows it. All right. We just got to follow up from the last couple of episodes because some interesting things happened during the last week, actually. So good stuff to touch on and go back and kind of touch on. All right. Again, snow is my least favorite. And I'm going to go over a little bit of the snow stuff. I don't like hunting in the snow for multiple reasons, but we've had it on for a little over a week now. In fact, I'm sitting here looking out my window, and it's blowing snow sideways right now. So I kind of wished it would go away for me, for my own personal reasons. But because we have it, let's talk about it. Here's some advantages of hunting in the snow. Definitely the tracks are more visible, right? They're easier to locate. If you got a little bit of fire under you, you can follow those tracks or walk those tracks out, which, I've done many a time. And I was thinking about this yesterday. Uh, I put on a track in the snow, and I was thinking, years ago, before the bear population was where it is now, if you found a track that was snowed in and you could make it out that it was an indention, you got in that track and you started walking it, and you may walk it for 2 or 3 days trying to find it because we just didn't have the bear population. And now it seems like, especially in my area, a lot of people, they find a track snowed in, boom, drive over it. Find a track snowed in, boom, drive over it. They want to find that fresher track. But anyway, easier to locate, easier to follow, and it's easier to pattern animals. What do you mean by pattern animals? Like, how many of you guys find a track in the snow that's heading in one direction, and you will ride all the way around to make sure that bear didn't cross out, right? So you can pattern. Okay, that bear didn't cross out of here, so he's got to be in here, right? So easier to pattern. It makes them. It makes the animals more predictable per se. You know, they're using established trails. I ran into that yesterday while walking into my dogs, and they're going to concentrate near food, and you will see that. I've seen that yesterday, like multiple tracks in one area. I was trying to sift through it to see if the pattern, the size of the pads and stuff were different. It was hard to tell because it was a lot of congestion in two certain areas. So just something to think about. The disadvantages of snow. It's colder most of the time to hold the snow on the ground. And like yesterday, there was a little bit of crust to the ice, so it had that ice cap over it, had a little layer to it. It's hard on the feet. We know that. And I've got some dogs that's got some really good feet. And around the edges, not in their pads, but around the edges of their feet where they had stepped through and broke it, they were a little bit raw. So I'm not a fan of it for that. Prefer to hunt on bare ground for me. And, you know, for first and foremost, it's easier movement for me. And like, I don't like walking in the snow. I mean, you go up, a lot of times you go up stop side of these ridges and you're taking one step up and two steps back, and it's counterproductive. It's a lot slicker. We talk about our boots a lot. You know, most of our guys are wearing Kinetrex, and they've got the number 4 sole on them, so they're a little bit harder. So when there's a slick object, i.e., rock, walking across a creek, or you hit some snowed over limbs or trees or whatever, and you step up on them, they're slick. So the movement is easier for me. And one thing that I found, and again, this is just purely my observation, that when you start getting snow and it starts getting colder, things start to lay up a little quicker. So the bare ground helps with the longer seasons. I feel like the bears stay out, but right now that's kind of cliche because they're moving. There's plenty of food. What's the disadvantages? Tracks are harder to find. You just can't see them around every corner, right? You got to go locate them, and I prefer that. And just like we talked about with the snow and the bear, like sticking right in the food sources, a lot of times, when that's not there, they'll be moving a little bit more. And again, that's purely my observation. So the bottom line is, from a strategic standpoint, snow favors the hunter, especially for tracking. So there it is. That's just my 2 cents on the snow. But I'm going to give you a breakdown of what I use it for. And I've even actually had a couple people comment on this past week. Is I use this snow as a phenomenal training tool. A training tool? What do you mean training tool? So I've only had my 6-year-old dogs out one time in the last week. Once. I have been primarily trying to put my 2-year-olds or younger, I got a couple 2-year-olds and some younger dogs down. The track's there. I see it. I know what they're running. I'm giving them the opportunities to learn and grow. I may not catch everything, but I am giving them the opportunity. So I view that as a training tool. I also love the fact that it is a prime opportunity to be very selective on your trash breaking. Deer, coyote tracks, at least you can see the coyote, where the coyotes have been, where they're using. I actually worked on that a little bit yesterday with multiple coyote tracks. So I value it as a training tool. I'm giving my younger dogs more opportunity. I'm keeping my older dogs, my 4-year-olds, and I got a 3-year-old. Yeah, I got a couple 4-year-olds and a 3-year-old, and everything else is 2 and under. And I've been giving those 2 years and under opportunity. I've been turning them loose. If I find a track, they're the ones that's getting the opportunity. So I value it as a training tool. That's what I use it for. So just to throw that out there, it is what it is. But while we're talking about snow, I seen something last week that was intrigued me. All right, so snow. So I seen my young dogs actually working the top of the snow where there were no tracks. Nothing. Just a blanket of snow. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching. And I remember years ago watching an old dog named Homer. And for the guys that are listening to this that know what dog I'm talking about, probably the best bear hound that I've ever had the pleasure of watching hunt. Phenomenal bear hound. And Homer was the dad of my old Frosty dog. He was also the granddad of my old Ring dog. Frosty's brother, AR, was Ring's dad. So when I talk about my seed litter goes back to that 20 plus years ago. Now it's watered down. We all know how that works, but that's why the seed litter is important to me. But anyway, I saw my young dogs working on top of the snow. And I mean, they're literally working like, you can hear their nose going, I mean, sniffing. I mean, they're popping in odor. And I'm sitting there going, interesting. I've seen this before, and I watched old Homer actually work up a slight holler into a saddle, cross over the saddle, start out the backbone of the ridge, and ended up eventually that day jumping a bear and treeing it. So while I'm standing there, I'm kind of reliving that memory. I'm like, oh, okay, let's see. All right, Heath, you know a lot more about odor and scent now. All right, let's break this down. So let's talk about snow and movement. Like, snow is not solid. We know that. It's porous. It's structure. It's made of ice crystals. They interconnect when they hit the ground, which causes them to have airspace between it, right? And when we talk about gases, we talked about the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds. They carry smell. They diffuse through these pores, per se. So odor does escape it. Now, it's going to be slower. It's not just going to be fast or it's not going to be free air like it is with no snow. But it does allow air and odor molecules to move through those interconnected pores. The extent of gas movement is going to depend on the snow density, how porous it is, and the temperature. That is going to be a key. So if you've ever watched the avalanche rescue dogs detect odor through snow, right? And we know because I've actually trained and certified dogs that are the cadaver dogs that are, we put them out on the water. We put them out on the lake and they have to find that odor escaping through water. So it is there. It can happen. There are multiple studies and field reports that demonstrate trained dogs can detect odor through many feet of avalanche snow. I looked at some of those studies. Montana State University has them in their library. Very interesting. It just talks about how the looser the snow, the better the odor, the density permits it to move faster. Handler reports actually confirm that the scent will work through like even snowpacks. Although the weather and the surface conditions influence how readily available that scent is. And working in the detection world, I know that if the scent's not available, it's hard on the dogs. And let's talk about like gas diffusion. I know we're getting a little scientific and a little nerdy here, but as a human, you release gases too. So scientific studies have shown that carbon dioxide they actually use carbon dioxide to move through the snow to do this study, which was very interesting. Temperatures are going to have a big influence on how odor moves. A warmer area, it can create more drive of the scent molecules. Remember, we talked about that molecule structure. Thermal within the snow can help drive movement or carry odor. Yes, there can be thermals underneath the snow. So just a basic summary of the snow. The scent can diffuse through the open pores. Temperature and heat flow are going to change that, make it better or make it worse. Airflow and wind at the surface is going to play a huge role in it. Is it ambient? Is it going to disperse differently? And what's it going to detach to once it comes up? And then again, we look at the animal olfactory system, which we're talking about our dogs. They referenced polar bears in the study. Very interesting because we're actually, tracking bears. But it was very interesting. So watching the young dogs work that blanket brought back memories, and it also intrigued me to learn and try to understand a little bit more. So that's the snow piece. Let's roll on to the early starters and the late bloomers. So guys, thank you for letting me tell that story last week about poo. And while I was going through my picture album, I've got a couple picture albums of the old. I got Polaroids. I've got the pictures that you had to go get developed. Some of you young bucks and girls wouldn't know much about that, but I've got a couple books full of that stuff. I was going through the picture trying to find that picture of poo up on the tree in which I posted on the Facebook. Some great memories I got to relive going through that. Some dogs and some hunts and people, friends that I was with. But one of those pictures made me realize that I may be in the job that I'm in because of one of the events that took place. And I'm going to tell you about that event. So we was out hunting. It was me, Earl, and Josh hunting one night. We were hunting Josh's places. He had some really good farms to hunt back then. And him and Earl both worked with me. And we'd been out hunting. It was after midnight or so. We had to work the next morning. So we were on our way to take Josh home. And we were heading down this 2-lane road back towards his house. And we come through a straight stretch and into a curve. And it got foggy. I mean, it was like the densest fog that you could see. And I'd slowed down. And I'm like, holy crap, there is a tree root. Like, if you cut off a tree and pull the roots out of the ground in the middle of the road. So I swerved to miss it. And I get around the curve and we're all like, what in the world was that? Why is that in the middle of the road? So we turn around and we go back to find an engine block in the middle of the road. And all the fog was the smoke coming off of that engine block. So we turn the flashers on. We all jump out with our hunting lights and we're like scanning and scanning and scanning. And we find the back end of this Camaro about 80 yards back in the side of a tree. And I'd love to be able to give you a visual, but the back end of the car was like if you took the car that's running and it's got all fours on the ground, take the tires and put the tires against the tree. And we actually found two people sitting on, like, laying over the bank. So we started talking to them, trying to make sense of what was going on, asking if there was any more people in the car. And they said yes. So Josh jumps in my truck, runs to his house, because back then we didn't have cell phones, runs to his house, calls 911, comes back to the scene, and we actually, Earl and I at that time had found another gentleman laying out in the middle of a field. Probably, it was a good piece. It's probably, it was 100 feet, 150 feet from the car, where the car back end was. And we provided what first aid we could at that point, tried to make sure that he was talking, which it was nothing. And long story short, it was about 40 minutes before fire and rescue got there, because we were in the middle of nowhere. They ended up landing the helicopter right there in the field beside. They flew him off. And actually, I knew who it was. Like, when it was all said and done, I knew who it was. And the other two that we found, the first, they were okay. They ended up being okay. The third person actually did live, thank the Lord. But I was going through those pictures, and it was a picture of me, Josh, and Earl with Pooh that night, and that set that memory off. And, over my coon hunting career, coon hunters are spending a lot of nights out, late nights out, coming back early mornings. Over my career of coon hunting, I run into another accident, and I don't know if it was before this or after this. I'm going to say it was after this, where the truck was over a bank. The headlights were shining up in the road. I stopped. I was by myself that time, and ended up finding that guy. He'd got thrown out, no seatbelt, right? None of those guys were wearing seatbelts, but I don't know that it would have helped them, because it literally split the car down. It tore the engine off at the firewall. Like, it just split the car. And come to find out, I mean, they were flying down. They were coming the same direction as us, had run off the road, hit the tree, broke the car in half, and spun the front end of the car out in the middle of the road. That's basically what happened. But I found two more accidents where the other person that got thrown out and he was deceased, and another accident where we were able to help and provide help to the person, and they were fine. So I look back at my career, and I think that kind of started that probe into what I do now. But it was interesting. So thank you guys for letting me share those stories and look through those pictures. I hadn't looked through them in a long time, but brought back some great memories and not so great memories. Well, let's finish this podcast up with the early starters and late bloomers. I got a lot of feedback on that. I've been asked several questions. Just want to follow up this past week with those late bloomers. So the one dog that I told you wasn't treating real well, hadn't missed a lick. He's been under 3-4 trees since then, and it's like he's been doing it his whole life. So I'll take it. And the one dog that I told you that hadn't done a whole lot, had run the deer, I have taken them out, and both races that I put them on been there. They made the whole race. They're there. So again, that pup's a year old, just a little over a year old right now. So that prompted a lot of discussion and debate, and you know, what are we willing to do? What are we not willing to do? And I just want to make it clear so we're all on the same page. Like, I would prefer a dog that shows me that potential early. Okay. Does it have to be an early starter? Does it have to be at 6 months old, you turn it loose and it don't look back? It does not have to be that. Would it be nice to have that? I think everybody's in agreement that yes, it would be nice. But unfortunately, all the dogs that are being produced, those are few and far between. I mean, they're there, and some guys are very lucky to have those dogs, but not everybody's that lucky. So I would prefer the dogs that show me potential. And when we talk about when I do my scent imprinting and I do my drags and stuff, that's just a way to start getting a gauge on what they're going to be capable of. Okay, so nothing more, nothing less, and it helps them understand the task at hand later on in life. That's it. But a question was brought to me about breeding. Would you breed a slow starter? Hmm. Now that's a great question. So I thought about it, and I would have reservations about breeding the slower starter because, in my mind, and this is just me thinking out loud to you guys, I know that litter has the potential to be late bloomers. Okay, if the mom or the dad is that dog, I know that genetically that has the disposition to be late bloomers. So then, when I go to place those pups, I have to place those pups strategically to people that are going to give them the opportunity to slowly mature and come on at their own age. And time is money, right? Most people don't want to fool with that because they want something that's going boom. Here we go. I can move on from this. I can move on from this. And by the comments and the conversations that I had, like, that was the general consensus. So I would have great reservations on doing that. Um, I'm not saying it's unprecedented, but if you're doing a breeding program, I think you have to think about that very in depth. Give it a lot of in depth thought, because, like I said, not only is that breeding, you're looking at years down the line too. And when you're not around, is somebody going to uphold the same um, thought process or training theories as you? Right? Everybody's different in that, right? So you got to set a standard. You got to meet those standards. It gives you something to strive for. So that was a really good question, and I had to think about it a little bit. Now, have I bred those slow starters before? I tried to think back about it, and I never bred Smokey. Oh man, and I do regret that because he was such a nice hound. And through conversations since that podcast, like, I've talked to several people that have had dogs that didn't come on to that year and a half, and they made their top dog. So anyway, it's just kind of food for thought. That's a tough spot to be in. I think you really need to think through that process and weigh the pros and the cons. Like I said, I think if we all had options, we would start um, with the earlier starters. And again, that don't mean they're not going to burn out and drop off at 2 years old. It doesn't mean that. It just says that it gives us a better sense of direction at an earlier age. That's it. That's all. So anyway, if you guys are still looking for gifts and stocking stuffers, check out W Hunting Supply. They've got top quality hound gear, tracking equipment, accessories that any hunter will appreciate. Perfect for those last minute Christmas finds. And we all know that we're just a week and a half away. So that's a wrap for What's Up Wednesday. Thank you guys for tuning in and walking the trail with me. If you got something out of today's episode, please be sure to follow and share with a fellow hunter. Until next time, keep them trailing, and we'll see you at the tree.
Tailgate drops before the light, coolers packed and the rig sitting right, tracking collars charged, beeping green, boots in the bed and the rifle's clean. Dog box rattling, engines hum, we're chasing bear till the day is done. Old ring barking like he knows what's near, nose to the wind, tail full of cheer. From the Virginia mountains to the Carolina clay, we're burning fuel and miles each day. Every turn's another tale, through mountain mist and paper trails. We see the sunset red in Tennessee, rise through the fog in old WV. North Carolina's pines echo loud with the cry of a hard-run hound. New York forest, Maine's deep snow, Vermont valleys where the black bears go. Truck keeps rolling, wheels don't care. We're chasing daylight, chasing bear. Rest stops few, the roads are long, but the fire in our hearts still burns strong. Wisconsin mornings cutting crisp and clear, Canada's wildwoods drawing near. Still got states we ain't run, but that hound dog fever won't let us quit. We see the sunset red in Tennessee, rise through the fall in old WV. North Carolina's pines echo loud with the cry of a hard-run hound. New York frost, Maine's deep snow, Vermont valleys where the black bears go. Truck keeps rolling, wheels don't care. We're chasing daylight, chasing bear. Gas station coffee, Alpha XL on the dash. Another back road, another bear track. Friends made fast and stories told slow, under stars where only hunters go. We see the sunrise gold in Canadian air, and it sets on a trail down in Appalachia. Packing steel and leather, grit and care, we're built for the road and chasing bear. So load the dogs and slam the gate, there's a trail ahead, we won't be late. From dawn to dusk, we're always there, chasing daylight, chasing them bears.